Welcome to your Barbados Today Evening News Update for Friday, November 1. Thanks for joining us. I'm Fernella Wedderburn. The Mia Motley administration will soon be presented with proposals for the enactment of legislation that deals with electronic evidence. Chairman of the Law Reform Commission, Sir David Simmons, made the announcement this evening during the inauguration ceremony for the Commission at the Radisson Aquatica Resort, Barbados. Sir David, a former Chief Justice and Attorney General of Barbados, said a bill to address electronic evidence is just one in a series of law reform measures that the state-appointed body is now examining.
We have been examining a number of drafts of model laws published by the Commonwealth Secretariat with a view to recommending reform of our laws following those models. In particular, we are looking at a bill dealing with computer and computer-related crime, a bill dealing with disclosure in criminal cases and guidelines for prosecution disclosure.
Private security officials have a contribution to make to national security, and Chairman of the Caribbean Association of Security Professionals, Oral Reed, sees no reason why they can't be enlisted in the fight against crime. Speaking at a training seminar examining the effectiveness and efficiency in safety and security practice, Reed said with the increase in criminal activity and under-resourced police departments, private security officials were in a good position to lend a helping hand.
I want to see persons involved at the macro level of security engage in discussion on these topics. Very recently, we also saw in the press discussion with regard to illicit trade. In fact, there was a whole conference that was organized for a specific group of persons at the Hilton recently, which looked at illicit trade. And I wonder what is the role that can be played by private security in identifying some of those factors which would, as indicators, which could help private security to support the national security police officers in directing information in respect of that. I wonder as well what role the private police, private security, could play in terms of human trafficking. We work at clubs and various places. We hear things just like anybody else. And if there are 5,000 plus of private security on the ground and there are only 880 state police, it tells me that we should be hearing and seeing things and should be in a position to channel information to the place where action can be taken in respect of these matters.
Government is making headway with its plans to implement a minimum wage for workers in Barbados. Word of this from Labour and Social Relations Minister Colin Jordan today as he addressed the launch of the International Labour Organization's Public Services International Gender Neutral Job Evaluation Project. He says women stand to benefit from the proposed move.
Since women in Barbados are generally more highly educated, one would maybe logically expect that women would be earning more than men. Higher paying jobs generally require greater skill and more years of education. The available earnings information show something interesting though. And that is that at the lower average weekly earnings level, and the average use is $500 per week. At the lower level, just below the average, below $500 per week, women dominate, accounting for 54%. For the higher earning categories, persons earning more than $500, men are the majority at 56%.
Regional Security for Public Services International, Sandra Messiah, welcomes the planned introduction of the minimum wage, but she's urging government to go a step further and consider giving workers a living wage.
certainly one of the things that we're doing in public services international is that we're tending to move away from that term minimum wage. We actually want to talk about a living wage. And to recognize too that there's some employers, and sad to say they tend to be mainly in the private sector, who hear about a minimum wage and actually keep people at the minimum wage. The minimum wage is a lower level. The intent is that you want to raise people above the minimum wage. And that's certainly a good move in terms of any government seeking to raise a minimum wage, but there must also be the policies that go along with it to make it very clear that we want to have a living wage, and that those things, whatever those base levels, are just things that you're seeking to have as a foundation, and whatever else must be done through collective bargaining, discussions in social partnership, social dialogue, that unions, employers, and governments are working towards making those areas higher, as high as they can be. Actually promoting economic growth. When people feel that they're valued, they put the work in.
Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has told Dominicans living in Barbados that their country is back on track after the devastation wrought by Hurricane Maria 2 years ago. When Skerrit met with Dominicans at the Black Rock Cultural Center last night, he said he did not come to promote the re-election of his government, but to give an account of their performance so far. Elections are due next year, but are expected to be held this year. He pointed to ongoing infrastructure projects as part of the post-Hurricane Maria rebuilding, as well as investments in tourism.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
It's Festive Friday at the Bridgetown Night Market at Pelican Craft Center. Kick off the weekend this Friday from 4 p.m. to midnight with loads of food, drinks, and entertainment. Get ready for Crop Over with the Rhythm Roots Street Parade. Party like it's Kadooman Day on the street around Pelican Village with costume reveler, music, and more. It's Festive Friday. It's Festive Friday at the Bridgetown Night Market at Pelican Village Center from 4 p.m. to midnight. Admission free.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To regional news now. In Jamaica, the United States Embassy has revoked the visas of some politicians, some members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the private sector. Among those affected, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Daryl Vaz. More in this report from Television Jamaica.
And in a statement this morning, Minister without portfolio in the Economic Growth and Job Creation Ministry, Daryl Vaz, confirmed that his United States visa has been revoked. Mr. Vaz says a correspondence from the United States Embassy in Kingston stated that his U.S. visa has been revoked. Subsequent to the visa issuance, information has come to light that you may be ineligible for a visa. It continued to say that if he would like to travel to the United States, he must reapply. Minister Vaz says he has advised the Prime Minister of the issue and has since initiated through the formal procedures and protocols of the process of seeking clarification to determine his eligibility to be issued a United States visa. The minister says as a public figure, he's obligated to keep the public updated on the outcome of the process of the appeal of the revocation, which has been formally lodged.
And on the international front, thousands of Iraqis today gathered in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, and across several southern cities for an 8th consecutive day of anti-government protests. Demonstrators demanded economic reform, a government overhaul, and an end to the country's quota-based power-sharing system. The president said the country's beleaguered prime minister has agreed to step down if a replacement was found. Despite promises of reforms and a broad reshuffle of his cabinet, the prime minister has struggled to address the protesters' demands. He has refused calls for an early election. And that's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM. I'm Fernella Wedderburn. Good evening.